Welcome, traveler. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of the present moment drift away, like dust lifting from the hooves of distant horses. Tonight, we leave behind the world of clocks and electric light, and step quietly into the endless, whispering grasslands of the 13th century. Stretching from Korea to Hungary, the Mongol Empire was the largest land empire ever to exist, fierce in conquest, but strangely gentle in governance. But this is not a tale of cavalry charges and conquest alone. Instead, tonight, we wonder, what did it smell like in a Mongol camp kitchen? What laws bound this vast world together? How did stories live before they were written? And what did it feel like to stand at the center of the world, in a city made of yurts, camels, silk, and strangers? Our story is not told in war cries, but in the crackling of firewood, the low slosh of fermented milk, the wind flapping against felt walls, and the quiet stirrings of a people who changed the world with horses, arrows, and a vision of order in the wilderness. Let's begin where all empires must. Not on the battlefield, but by the stew pot. Imagine yourself standing ankle-deep in trampled grass, just outside a circular felt tent known as a fire. The wind is sharp, dry, and relentless, rustling the long skirts of women passing by, and carrying the distant braying of goats. Smoke curls steadily from a squat iron chimney poking through the tent's crown. Inside, it's warm and dim, but you are not resting. You are cooking. You are the camp cookbird, perhaps not by choice, but because you're too old to ride or too slow with a bow. Still, your task is essential and endless. The great Mongol horde is always on the move, and wherever the horses go, the stomachs follow. Each morning begins before sunrise. Your fire is built from dried dung, the only fuel in this treeless world. The smoke stings the eyes, yet you know its scent is home. Pungent, bitter, steady, you prepare mutton again. Always mutton. Strips of stringy sheep meat are hacked with a dull knife and dropped into large cauldrons. Sometimes there are onions, or garlic, or if a raid was successful, a handful of foreign spices, pepper from India, perhaps, or caraway from Persia. But usually, it is just meat. Boiled, again, the cauldron groans above the fire. You add sour mare's milk to the pot, not for flavor, but for nutrition. It sours quickly in the steppes, fluctuating temperatures, curdling in thick white globs. This too is added every day. The same simple equation: meat, milk, fire, repeat. Occasionally, nobles send requests. A general wants broth served early before his morning meeting. A shaman requests a dish without bones. You must comply. There is no room for error under the Khan's rule. There are no written recipes, no measured amounts, just instinct, memory, and a keen understanding of how not to poison your commanders. When the camp moves, which it often does, your tent is the first to be broken down and the last to be raised. You ride behind the herds, always arriving later than everyone else, always expected to serve food immediately. Fat, in this world, is life. You are praised not for finesse, but for the thickness of the broth. A greasy film on the surface is a sign of generosity and care, but the work is not without risk. Once, a careless cook undercooked a goat for the Khan's household. The meat was chewy, cold in the middle. He was removed, quietly, permanently. Evenings are no better. After the army eats, the generals may gather to drink arag fermented mare's milk by the bowlful. You are expected to clean up the mess, but not interrupt. You listen from behind the flap, hearing stories of battles, marriages, omens, and stars. You hear laughter, sometimes crying. You eat last. Your portion is what's left in the bottom of the pot: scraps of tendon, overcooked marrow, and thin salty soup. But you are grateful. Others have gone hungry in this empire. Still, not all is drudgery. You share jokes with the washerwomen. You barter scraps for goat cheese. A small boy, too young to fight, sometimes helps you peel onions, though most days you simply talk to yourself, or to the pot. At night, you collapse into your bedroll, thick felt and fur's bones aching, skin tinged with smoke and fat, dreaming of things you've never tasted: wheat bread or honey. The Mongol Empire may have ruled the world, but for the camp cook, it was a world of repetition, fatigue, and quiet fear. And yet, there is a rhythm to this life. A rhythm like the beating of hooves across grass, like the boiling of mutton, like the pulse of an empire that never truly sleeps. Imagine yourself now not in the smoky confines of a felt-walled kitchen, but riding steadily across a sea of grass, with no trees in sight and only the sound of the wind in your ears. The horizon is vast and uninterrupted, and every breath of air smells faintly of horsehair and dust. Ahead of you rides a man with a battered bow strapped to his back and a gaze that never rests. He is not yet Genghis Khan. He is Temujin of Yasuge, born into the Borjigin clan near the Anan River, in what is now Mongolia. Temujin's childhood was not marked by nobility or peace. After his father was poisoned by rival tribesmen, his family was abandoned by their own clan and left to survive on scraps. They dug roots from the earth, hunted small animals, and lived on the edge of starvation. From such hunger, ambition grows. Temujin learned early that power came not from birthright, but from loyalty and cunning. He forged bonds with blood brothers, and practiced the art of alliance like a patient shepherd shaping his herd. He rewarded loyalty with unwavering generosity and punished betrayal with quiet, efficient brutality. But Temujin's brilliance was not merely in winning battles, it was in shaping a structure where once there had been only shifting loyalties. By 1206, he had united the warring Mongol tribes under his banner. At a great gathering, a Kuriltai, he was declared Chinggis Khan, or Genghis Khan, universal ruler. This was not merely a new title, it was a new world. He began to codify laws known as the Yasa. This was no written code, but an oral and evolving one, passed from lips to ears across the steppe. The laws were not arbitrary. They were designed to preserve unity, ensure discipline, and instill fear where necessary. There were rules for everything. No one could steal horses without facing death. Religious tolerance was to be enforced. Spies and traitors were to be executed swiftly. Generals who failed were demoted. Those who succeeded were raised no matter their origin. The army was restructured into units of 10, 100, and 1,000, not based on family, but function. A man from one tribe might ride alongside another from a rival family. It was unity by design. The horde moved as one, and move they did. Temujin's forces poured westward and eastward. Cities fell. Walls that had stood for centuries crumbled beneath siege weapons and strategies borrowed from the engineers of conquered lands. But even in conquest, Temujin remained restless. He never settled permanently. Even when he ruled over more land than any man before him, he still preferred the simple gore, the fell tent, the hard saddle. He respected merchants and envoys. He sought intelligence from across the world, not merely to destroy, but to understand. He sent diplomats to Persia, emissaries to China, letters to Europe, and when his messengers were killed, his response was total. Yet he was not immortal. In 1227, Genghis Khan died. How exactly remains a mystery. Some say he fell from a horse. Others whisper of betrayal, or a wound taken in battle. His body was taken to an unknown resting place, perhaps hidden in the forested hills of Kente, buried by loyal followers who slaughtered all witnesses before vanishing into the steppe. His legacy, however, did not fade. The empire would expand under his sons and grandsons. His laws would linger. His image, brutal, calculating, visionary, would haunt both east and west for centuries. But beneath the myths, there was always a man, a boy who had known hunger, a rider who had never learned to sit still, a leader who sought not peace, but order in a chaotic world. And so, as the stars turned silently over the plains of Asia, you may imagine his spirit still riding somewhere beyond the edge of empire, always searching, always in motion. The secret history of the Mongols. Myth, oral tradition, and horse lore from the steppe. Now, let your mind wander deeper, not across geography, but time. The empire is quiet for a moment. The hooves rest. The smoke of conquest has thinned. Instead of war camps and cauldrons, you sit beside a flickering fire at night. The grass around you sways in slow waves, and across the flames, an old man leans forward. He doesn't carry a scroll. He carries stories, the kind that live only in the breath, not the page. This is how Mongol history was preserved, not written at first, but spoken. Before the Mongols ruled cities, before their names were carved into stone, their truth lived in rhythm, repetition, and metaphor. The greatest of these surviving works is called The Secret History of the Mongols, written in the mid-13th century, but based on much older oral traditions. It is part epic, part history, part myth. Its tone is hushed, reverent, hence the name Secret. It was not made for the eyes of foreigners, but for the Mongol nobility themselves, a private record of a public greatness. It begins not with a battle, but a blue-gray wolf. There was a blue-gray wolf born with destiny. His mate was a fallow doe. They crossed the oceanic grasslands and birthed the people of the steppes. This is not science, nor is it meant to be. It is a symbolic origin, a story that binds the Mongol identity to the wild, to the animal, to the endless motion of life itself. The Secret History describes Genghis Khan's rise not merely as a political story, but a divine one. His birth is marked by blood clot in his fist, a sign, they believed, of future greatness. And his victories are woven with dreams, signs, and ancestral spirits. Throughout the text, we hear not just of battles, but of horses. Always horses. The Mongols had over 30 words for the shades and shapes of horse coats. They bred them not just for strength, but for endurance, temperament, and terrain. A rider might have 5 horses and switch between them during the day, keeping each one fresh. Their saddles were light, their stirrups short, allowing them to stand and shoot in motion. In the stories, horses are not tools, they are characters. One tale tells of a stallion that refused to cross a river, saving its rider from an ambush waiting on the far bank. Another speaks of a mare that whinnied 3 times in a dream, warning her master of betrayal. There are rules, too, spoken softly around campfires. Never strike a horse across the nose. Never walk between tethered horses. They may kick in unison. When a foal is born, a piece of its mane is braided with grass and tucked behind the ear of its rider, for protection. But it's not only horses that occupy this cultural universe. The Mongols believed in Tengritha, eternal blue sky, not a deity with a form or a face, but a presence that watched, judged, and granted favor. Genghis Khan often invoked Tengri in his decisions, believing his conquests were divinely sanctioned. Shamans were everywhere. Draped in furs and bells, they danced and sang in the twilight, interpreting signs, cracks, and bones, flights of birds, the color of the dawn. Before battle, a shaman might trace a circle in the dust with a staff, or burn juniper for protection. The Mongols were not mindless conquerors. They were part of a deep, patterned world where every wind carried meaning, every animal had a spirit, and every story repeated like hoofbeats over earth. The secret history reveals their doubts, their internal conflicts, even their private griefs. We hear of Genghis Khan's fear that his sons are not worthy, of betrayals by blood relatives, of dreams that whisper of death. This is not the history taught in loud classrooms or etched in museum plaques. This is the quiet history, the one murmured at night, when the stars are bright and the world seems too vast to comprehend. It was history meant to soothe, to bind, and to remember. So as you lie back now, perhaps you can imagine that the stories are still being told, drifting like smoke from the fire, rising into the night air, where horses still graze and ancestors still listen. Life at Karakoram, hosting the world in the middle of nowhere. The steppe stretches in all directions, soft, undisturbed, eternal, but nestled between two low hills, far from the centers of civilization, as the world then knew them, rises something unexpected, a city, not of stone, but of structure, not of height, but of presence. This is Imagine arriving there after weeks of travel. The horses are weary, your saddle is stiff with sweat and dust, and then like a mirage gates appear. Walls not tall, but strong, framed in clay and stone, ring a dense cluster of tents, yurts, wooden buildings, and embassies. Because Karakoram, founded by Genghis Khan and expanded under his son Gadai, was never meant to impress with scale. It was meant to function as the beating heart of the world's most expansive land empire. It is now the 1240s. Gadai rules, and Karakoram is alive. Inside, the air smells of a dozen spices. Cinnamon from India, incense from China, sweat, leather, and yak butter. Merchants speak in Persian, Wugar, Russian, Chinese, and languages long since vanished. There are translators in every hall, sometimes 5 deep. Gold, silk, brocade, ivory, and lacquerware pass hand to hand. But unlike the towering cities of Europe or China, Karakoram is not vertical, it is interconnected. Paths between tents are precise. Fires burn in stone hearths next to woven felt. A traveler from Baghdad might sleep in a yurt beside an envoy from Kiev. There's a mosque here, a Buddhist temple, a Taoist shrine, a Christian church. The Mongols do not build to convert, they build to accommodate. Religious tolerance is a pillar of their rule, not out of pure idealism, but pragmatic governance. When your empire includes more faiths than most kingdoms have towns, peace comes by respect. At the palace, the central courts of our lions pour arag from their mouths. Their eyes glint with inlaid jewels, a mechanical marvel built by captured artisans from the West. Gadai Khan receives guests with a curious blend of steppe, plainness, and imperial authority. He sits on a low platform, legs crossed, dressed in fine robes, but the felt tent behind him is familiar. There is no golden throne, no endless flight of stairs, just order. Ambassadors bring gifts. Silk scrolls from Song China, fur-lined cloaks from Muscovy, fragile glass from Venice. In return, they receive safety, grazing lands for their caravans, and the right to travel under the Paza tablet, granting them imperial protection. For the Mongols, roads are veins, trade is blood, and information is life. Masanjazam riders dart in and out of Karakoram at all hours. They ride day and night, changing horses at stations every 30 miles. Some carry military orders, others letters, some fresh fish from rivers hundreds of miles away still cold in ice-packed boxes. The network is tight, fast, and well guarded. And yet, amidst the diplomacy and trade, there is still the rhythm of the old life. Herds graze just beyond the city's edge. Children chase each other between tents. Women dry cheese curds on flat stones. Every evening, songs echo across the fields, deep, unhurried, resonant. Long vowels, stretched like the horizon. One moment, you might watch a Hungarian monk converse with a Chinese astronomer. The next, you hear the low chant of a Tibetan lama mingling with the snoring of camels in the stables. Karakoram is not beautiful in the classical sense, but it is something rarer, functional, multicultural, and curiously serene. When the capital is eventually moved to Doda later, Beijing Karakoram will fade, then vanish. Today, only traces remain in the dirt. Scattered stones, the outline of a palace, broken pottery in the grass. But in its time, it was a city unlike any other. Built by nomads, alive with the world, and always, like the empire it served, in motion even if it didn't move. The wind that never stops. Now, as the fire burns low and the stars emerge, silent and unhurried above the vast steppe, let us take a final breath with the past. You've walked through the smoky camp kitchens where mutton boiled endlessly. You've ridden with a boy named Temujin, as he carved unity from chaos. You've listened to whispers preserved in horse lore and dream, and you've stood in the quiet crossroads of Karakoram, where the world met in felt-walled halls. The Mongol Empire, for all its enormity and ferocity, was a world of careful systems of rhythm, of silence, of motion without haste. For centuries, historians would write of its violence, of sieges and fear. But beneath those headlines lived a calmer, stranger truth. This was an empire not born from cities, but from campfires. Its roads were not paved, but worn by hooves. Its rulers sat cross-legged on carpets, not thrones. Its strength was not only in swords but in the saddle, in the pot, in the poem whispered by firelight. And even now, long after its borders have dissolved into other nations and other empires, its influence lingers like the wind over the grass. Gentle, constant, unseen but everywhere. As you close your eyes, imagine the sway of tall grass, the soft tread of horses passing in the distance, and the cool hush of the night air beneath a felt roof. Somewhere, far away, the last embers of a cooking fire glow. A lone rider checks the sky for signs, and an old story begins again, soft and slow, like sleep. You are safe now. The past has nothing more to ask of you. Rest.